Nelson Mandela. This story will touch your heart deeply. It shows how someone can rise from the hardest times, and no matter how tough life gets, hope and strength will always shine through. The boy from Vizo. In a small village in South Africa, a baby boy was born on July 18, 1918. The village was called Mvizo, and the boy's name was Nelson Mandela. His name had a special meaning. In his language, Ralilala meant pulling the branch of a tree, but it also meant troublemaker. Nobody knew that this little boy would, one day, become one of the most respected leaders in the world. Nelson's family was part of the Thembu tribe. His father, Gadla Henry Mfakaniiswa, was a chief and advisor to the king of the tribe. Though they lived in a small home, the family was respected. They had cattle, land, and traditions. Young Ralilala ran around barefoot in the open fields. He played with other boys. He learned how to herd cattle. His mother taught him to be kind and respectful. When he was 7 years old, he was sent to school. On the first day, his teacher gave him a new name, Nelson. It was common at that time for African children to be given English names in school. From then on, he was known as Nelson Mandela. A new home, a new life. Nelson's father died when he was just 9 years old. After his father's death, Nelson was sent to live with the chief of the Thembu people. This chief was very powerful and kind. He adopted Nelson as his own son. Nelson moved to a village called Kunu. Here, his life changed. He lived in a bigger house. He saw men talk about leadership, law, and justice. Nelson listened carefully. He learned that leaders must serve the people. They must be brave, honest, and fair. He went to a good school. He wore shoes and trousers for the first time. He read books and loved learning. Nelson enjoyed stories of African heroes. These stories made him dream about freedom and justice for all people. Nelson did well in school. He went to Clarkebury Boarding Institute, then to Healdtown, a college for black students. Finally, he went to Fort Hare University, the best university for black students in South Africa. At Fort Hare, he studied English, history, and law. He wanted to help his people. He also joined the student council and became a leader. But when he stood up against unfair rules, he was expelled from a university. The City of Dreams. After leaving university, Nelson returned home. The chief was angry. He wanted Nelson to marry a girl he had chosen. But Nelson wanted to make his own decisions. So, he ran away to Johannesburg, the big city. Life in Johannesburg was hard. Nelson worked as a guard, then as a clerk in a law firm. At the same time, he continued his studies through distance learning. He wanted to become a lawyer. In Johannesburg, Nelson saw the truth of apartheid, a cruel system where white people ruled and black people had no rights. Black people could not vote. They had to carry passes. They could not live in white areas. They were treated unfairly in every part of life. Nelson was shocked. He said, "How can one group of people have everything and another group have nothing, just because of skin color?" This made him angry, but not hopeless. He wanted to fight for change, joining the fight for freedom. In 1944, Nelson joined the African National Congress (ANC). It was a group of black South Africans who wanted equal rights. With his friends Walter Sisulu and Oliver Tambo, he formed the ANC Youth League. Nelson believed in nonviolent protest. He helped organize marches and boycotts. People refused to buy from shops that supported apartheid. They protested unfair laws. In 1952, Nelson and Oliver Tambo opened South Africa's first black law firm. They helped black people who were hurt or treated badly by the system. Nelson became more famous. People called him a strong and brave leader. But the government was watching him. They saw him as a threat. They began to arrest him many times. He was banned from speaking in public. But he did not stop. He said, "We must fight injustice wherever it lives." A dangerous time. In 1960, a peaceful protest took place in a town called Sharpeville. Thousands of black South Africans gathered to protest against the pass laws. But police opened fire. 69 people died. This event shocked the world. After this, the government banned the ANC. It became illegal. Nelson went underground. He used fake names. He moved from place to place. He spoke to people in secret. He traveled to other countries for support. He helped start a new group called Umkhonto weSizwe, which means Spear of the Nation. This group believed that peaceful protest was not enough. They used sabotage to fight the system. In 1962, Nelson was arrested again. He was charged with leaving the country without permission and planning to overthrow the government. At the Rivonia trial, he gave a powerful speech. He said, "I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society. It is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." The court sentenced him to life in prison. Robben Island. Nelson Mandela was sent to Robben Island, a prison in the sea near Cape Town. The prison was cold and lonely. He lived in a small cell with no bed and no toilet. The walls were gray. The floor was hard. The food was poor. Prisoners had to work hard in the hot sun. They broke rocks in the quarry. Guards treated them badly. But Nelson did not give up. He kept hope alive. He made friends with other prisoners. He studied and taught others. He showed kindness even to the guards. He said, "Hating someone is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." Over time, the guards began to respect him. He was later moved to other prisons, Pollsmoor and Victor Verster, but he spent 27 years in prison. The world starts to listen. While Nelson Mandela was in prison, the world began to speak out. People in many countries started to learn about apartheid. They saw how unfair the system was. They heard about Mandela, the man who gave up his freedom to fight for others. Students, workers, teachers, and leaders around the world asked the South African government to release him. Big music concerts were held to raise awareness. One of the most famous was the Free Nelson Mandela concert in London in 1988. Thousands of people sang for his freedom. The South African government was under pressure. Countries stopped trading with South Africa. The economy was getting worse. The people were angry. There were protests in the streets. The government saw that change was needed. They knew they could not keep Mandela in jail forever. Freedom at last. On February 11, 1990, after 27 long years, Nelson Mandela was finally released from prison. The whole world watched as he walked out of Victor Verster prison holding the hand of his wife, Winnie Mandela. He smiled, but his face showed the pain of many years. He raised his fist in the air as a sign of victory. He said, "I stand before you not as a prophet but as a humble servant of you, the people." Mandela did not speak with anger. He did not ask for revenge. He asked for peace, unity, and love. He called on all South Africans, black and white, to build a new country together. He worked closely with the president at the time, F.W. de Klerk, to end apartheid. They spoke about peace. They made new laws. Political parties were allowed again. People of all races were given the right to vote. In 1993, Nelson Mandela and F.W. de Klerk won the Nobel Peace Prize for their work to bring peace and democracy to South Africa. President Mandela. On April 27, 1994, South Africa held its first democratic election. For the first time, black South Africans could vote. People stood in long lines. They waited for hours. Some cried. Others sang. It was a day of history. Nelson Mandela voted for the first time in his life. On May 10, 1994, he became the first black president of South Africa. In his speech, he said, "Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another." As president, Mandela worked for peace and unity. He knew the country was divided. Many white people were afraid. Many black people were angry. But Mandela wanted to heal the nation. He started programs to bring people together. He improved schools, hospitals, and housing for black South Africans. He made sure all people were treated equally under the law. The power of forgiveness. One of the most powerful things Nelson Mandela did was to forgive. He invited his former prison guards to his presidential events. He treated them with respect. He believed that hate would only bring more pain. In 1995, South Africa hosted the Rugby World Cup. Rugby was a sport loved mostly by white South Africans. Mandela wore the team's jersey and supported the national team, the Springboks. When the team won the final, he walked onto the field and handed the trophy to the white team captain. The stadium, full of mostly white fans, chanted, "Nelson! Nelson! Nelson!" That moment showed the world that the new South Africa had truly begun. One term, one goal. Nelson Mandela served as president for 5 years. He chose not to run for a second term. He believed in democracy and wanted to give others a chance to lead. After leaving office, he continued to work for peace, health, and education. He started the Nelson Mandela Foundation, which helps poor communities and fights for human rights. He also worked to fight HIV/AIDS, a disease hurting many South Africans. He lost his own son to the disease and wanted others to be safe. Though he was getting older, Mandela kept traveling, giving speeches, and spreading hope. A legacy of hope. Nelson Mandela passed away on December 5, 2013, at the age of 95. The whole world mourned. Leaders from every country came to South Africa to honor him. People sang his favorite songs. Children danced. Flags were lowered. Candles were lit. He was more than a leader. He was a symbol of peace, courage, and forgiveness. A man of courage. Nelson Mandela was not a strong man by body, but he had a strong heart. He was brave. He had the courage to stand up when others were afraid. Even when he was alone, he did not stop. When he was in prison, he lost many things. He lost his freedom. He lost time with his family. He lost his youth. But he never lost his courage. He said, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it." This means everyone feels fear, but brave people do not let fear stop them. Mandela's courage helped a whole nation. It helped the world. He showed that with courage, one man can change history. His simple life. Nelson Mandela never became rich. He did not live in a big palace. He lived a simple life. He wore traditional clothes. He smiled with everyone. He liked to play with children. He liked gardening and reading. He never acted like a king. Even when he was president, he stayed humble. He listened more than he spoke. People loved him because he respected everyone. He once said, "A good head and a good heart are always a great combination." A global icon. Mandela became a world hero. People in every country knew his name. Children learned about him in school. Streets, schools, and parks were named after him. He was called the father of the nation in South Africa, a global icon of peace, a symbol of freedom. He met world leaders. He received more than 250 awards. He was honored with statues in many cities, including London, Washington, D.C., and Johannesburg. He used his fame not for himself, but to help others. He visited poor areas. He spoke for people who had no voice. He gave hope to millions. Mandela Day. In 2009, the United Nations announced that July 18th, Mandela's birthday, would be called Nelson Mandela International Day. People around the world were asked to do 67 minutes of good work on that day. The number 67 stands for the 67 years Mandela spent fighting for human rights. People clean parks, feed the poor, visit the sick, help children, and spread kindness. Mandela Day is not just a day to remember him. It is a day to live like him. Mandela's words that moved the world. Here are some of his most famous quotes. These are short, simple, and powerful. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. It always seems impossible until it is done. The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin. His words touched hearts. They gave strength. They taught us to believe in peace, in justice, and in ourselves. His final years. In his last years, Mandela lived quietly. He spent time with his family. He was tired, but still full of love. People came from around the world to visit him. Everyone wanted to see him, to talk to him, to thank him. In 2010, South Africa hosted the FIFA World Cup. Mandela appeared at the closing ceremony. The stadium cheered. It was one of his last public moments. He died peacefully on December 5, 2013. The world cried, but they also smiled because of the life he lived. A story that will never end. Nelson Mandela's story does not end with his death. His story lives in the hearts of people. His life is a book of hope. Every page teaches a lesson. Today, when a poor child goes to school, it is part of Mandela's dream. When black and white children play together, it is because of Mandela's fight. When people speak for justice, they walk in Mandela's path. He gave us a gift, a better world. Dear reader, what can we learn from Nelson Mandela? Be brave, even when you are afraid. Forgive, even when it is hard. Speak for others, not just for yourself. Never stop learning. Never stop trying. And always believe in the power of love. Mandela showed us that one person can make a difference. He proved that peace is stronger than hate. And he reminded us that freedom is for all. This is the story of Nelson Mandela, the man who walked a long road, not for himself, but for all of us.